I am the fourth generation of teachers in my family. So it goes back uh, more than a century. And my father uh, was a university professor also in the field of education. And my mom was, for the time that she was working, education supervisor in the public school system in Spain. So I have been surrounded by this world ever since I was born. My grandma was a multi-grade rural school teacher somewhere in La Manta, and the house at that village now has her name. There are not that many teachers who got a street named after them, right? Well, it's gotta be a small town. So this is all a matter of identity for the family, and it's a matter of certain pride for the family. I studied in Madrid, and then I got a scholarship to study in Columbia University, a teachers college, where I got in in contact with very good scholars, etc. So I got into research, did my PhD dissertation, got into academia in Spain. Somebody sent my CV to the World Bank, who was into a batch recruitment of mid-career education people. And I got interviewed, I got offered the job, and I went to the bank straight from the university. Easy it is to explain why I got into this sector and into this world. One clear comparative advantage of the World Bank is that you have the education economists to be able to do public expenditure reviews, see how much money is going to the sector, who is making decisions about it, how is that money allocated, how much of it is actually spent, and what is the impact of those expenditures on quality and on equity. If you add to that getting to the country and going to 2, 3, 4 schools, sitting down with the school principal, and by definition, school principals are the people who know more about the system, because they are right there in between the front line and the managers, administrators, and politicians. So once you find your school principal, the one who is really good, then what you do is every time you go to the country, you go see that person. That's the first thing you do. You touch base with that school principal, and if you put together your school principal with technical reports on public finance, on governance structures, and if you have them, international testing programs, which is not the ultimate most important thing. For many of my colleagues, they are. Not for me. But if you put all those together, you have a fairly good view. And of course, if you are in good terms with your counterparts and you have access to the minister, deputy ministers, etc., and you can sit down with those and have meaningful conversations, I mean, you get a very good sense of what is going on. And then you're able to mobilize the resources of your institution and your team to try and add value to that situation. So that has been my approach in whatever I have worked. Egypt, that has been one of my problems. When I started working there, one of the issues was, and you know that, the so-called security clearances. The transaction cost of getting a school visit is huge. And then the whole thing was so inflexibly arranged that it loses the part of the purpose. It was lost. So this was something that I missed during my time in Egypt. I still cannot understand why it is so complicated to just go visit the school. But anyway, security is security. But I have missed that part of the story in Egypt, and I think I'm way less knowledgeable about education in Egypt, precisely for this reason. My PhD dissertation was a comparative study of these secondary graduation university access examinations or tests in 6 countries. So been working on that particular issue since, well, for 30 years now. When it was 2006, I went to Egypt and I had that session with the minister, closed door. I was suggesting you ensure high school graduation on one hand, then if you want to keep your highly competitive exam, you keep your highly competitive exam. The response of the minister was, this is great. This is a great analysis. I fully agree with everything you're saying, but I don't dare touch anything on this matter because I would be eaten by the wolves. He said, no, look, you're right on this, but I don't have the political capital to push in this direction. So the idea that Dr. Tarek had in the beginning, and that is little by little being pushed forward, was very much what I had proposed his predecessor 12 years before. And it was essentially this splitting up the double function of the examination and making sure that everybody would leave secondary school with a piece of paper that would open the door not only to the low-skilled labor market, but to further education opportunities. And then for those who wanted to compete at that point or later on, sure, let's keep the competition open, but let's not force it on the entire student population. The concerns are pretty clear. There's nothing that can replace your face-to-face school classroom teacher. There's nothing that can replace your primary school, especially for the early years, the KGs and grades 1 to 4. There's nothing that can replace that. So all these online, on-screen platforms, virtual, WhatsApp, etc., we have to do it. And we should keep doing it because we're moving to, for at least a year or two, to this dual, blended, they call it now. But let's make no mistake. I mean, all this distance, remote, virtual learning is good for adults. This is not good for a 6-year-old. Let's face it. And there's going to be a huge loss of learning for many students. And that loss, that learning loss, is not going to be distributed equally. No matter how hard we try, no matter how sophisticated the learning platforms, no matter how sophisticated the Egyptian Knowledge Bank and any other knowledge bank, the same people who always lose are going to lose big time again. And I'm sorry to say this, but that's what I believe.